And I'm interested in both of what you have to say, but you are a true unicorn here at CANNES. You are a buyer, and we have you cornered in the Spectrum Reach apartment. We've locked the doors. Welcome to the Media Odyssey Podcast from Lion. That is Marion Ranchet.
And this is Shapiro.
So this is, as we talked about earlier today, we did another podcast episode earlier today. This is your first Lion.
It is.
And we talked about your first impressions there, the huge activations, right? We did stop by the LinkedIn activation. What did you think of the LinkedIn activation?
Well, they needed us to boost it up a little. Not much was happening. Sorry, LinkedIn.
Yeah, Microsoft definitely needs our help. But I tested out my theory. I had felt that there was this weird, anxious attitude, but a bounce back kind of new, renewed optimism here on the Croisette at Callahan. And I tested that out since I saw you last.
Okay. What did people say?
And yeah, I have heard from a number of both sides, sell side, buy side, that they feel there's a weird corner that's been turned in the year for some reason. Maybe it's because our president is really coming through with the taco and is ultimately people are kind of betting that things are going to even out. Or I don't know exactly what the rationale is, but there does seem to be a renewed optimism here on the Croisette. But you've been paying attention to the news that's been breaking here. I have not.
Yeah, you do the feeling. And
then I do the
news.
emotion, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
what are the news stories out of Callahan that you've been following so far?
I'm a bit biased. The one that I saw that really caught my attention is the one between Sky, Channel 4 and ITV. I think it's an interesting one because I think in the UK, the market is super advanced, but they still need to figure out an easy way to bring SMBs to TV. So essentially with this announcement, they're actually making it easy for SMBs to buy across Sky, Channel 4, and ITV. And as we know, in Europe, linear TV is not dead yet.
It's not dead yet. No, it's very much alive. It's very interesting, though. You know, the oldest televisions in the world is in the UK, but their ad market is still relatively immature. They don't have this kind of automated SMB. It's not as prevalent in the UK as it is in the US, which is, I think, an interesting segue. Also, there's been a couple of news stories been made about Amazon here on the Croisette that we talked
about.
That. So we're going to ask some of our guests for that. I think that's a good segue to bring on our guests. Shall we do? Let's bring on Dave Campanelli from Horizon Media and Dan Callahan from Spectrum Reach. So welcome our guests. Dan Callahan from Spectrum Reach, Group Vice President of National Accounts. Yeah?
Yes, sir.
And Dave Campanelli, President of Global Investments at Horizon Media.
That's right. Thank you very much for having me.
So you heard, because this apartment is too small, thank you, Spectrum Reach, for you not to have heard us talking about the mood here on the Croisette. And I always find that period, that kind of weird nether period between the Upfronts in May and June at Callahan to be this strange temperature read for the year. And I'm interested in both of what you have to say, but you are a true unicorn here at CANNES. You are a buyer. And we have you cornered in the Spectrum Reach apartment. We've locked the doors. But I'd love to hear what you're hearing, both in the mood in the upfront and the mood here, generally speaking, on the Croisette.
Yeah, well, for the upfront, I think there's two themes that we're seeing in the upfront to start with. Sports, and maybe it sounds cliche, but sports is just dominating the conversation. Everyone who's registering budgets and everyone who's selling sports is kind of rushing to the table to secure what they need in sports, and everything else is kind of dragging along behind it. And that's been the case to some extent for the last several years, but by far this year it is just like the driver of the upfront. And I think without that, the upfront would be a much more subdued marketplace, but it's so strong. Super Bowl's heavily sold out already, and I think that's obviously way ahead of pace. It's usually in the fall or before it sells out. So it's been sports one, and I think the second part is the currency question. I think it's maybe become my least favorite topic of conversation is alternative currencies. But everyone was ready to jump onto Nielsen Big Data, and now questions are coming up.
There were some glitches there in the past.
There's some glitches. There's a lot of, I guess, inconsistencies in the numbers, and big leaps in other areas, big declines on some networks. So there was a meeting with the MRC and the buy side last week in Nielsen. I think the VAB and networks in Nielsen are having a meeting or had a meeting to discuss it. So a little bit TBD on the rollout of Nielsen Big Data.
Well, this is not the first time that's happened. I mean, they were decredited, I guess, unaccredited, whatever you would call it, a couple years ago. And I made some noise about this a little while ago. And what do you think it means for the multi-currency world? I mean, I posited to you, I think at one point when we were talking about this, the concept that the buyer gets to choose the currency, and it's going to wind up being different currencies for different campaigns, often within the same brand or from different agencies. Is that how you feel like it's going to run?
That is how we have approached it for quite some time now. We are very comfortable at Horizon living in a multi-currency world. We unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, work in an industry where it moves in monolith too much. It's very hard to do something different when you don't have acceptance from the sell side and other buyers. So when we go to market and we try to buy an alternative currencies, some sellers may adopt it, some won't. Some will adopt it for advanced targets. Some will adopt it for demos. So it's really hard to get any kind of consistency even from our end to go to tell a client, hey, we're going to transact on an alternative currency, but then we can only do it with 3 network groups, and the other 3 we can't. So it's still in a very murky place, and it's just been a real challenge over the last few years.
I heard you say that you feel like there's a lot of numbers, too many numbers, that we're getting almost overloaded. So what are the metrics that matter to you as a buyer?
At the end of the day, performance is what counts. We can measure things by how many people are watching and the subs of a streamer, but really, did our ad placements work? So the measurement of that is what's critically important. And kind of tying back to the multi-currency conversation, that means something different for every advertiser. So you're not going to have one solution for that for the marketplace, which again is another reason why we want to get there. We want to get to a point where we're transacting with partners in terms of outcomes and not in measuring the number of views. And so based on that, we're okay if we count the measure of views in VideoAmp or iSpot or Nielsen Panel or Nielsen Big Data, because that's a proxy for it, but we really want to get to the measurement of it. So that's kind of where we'd like to get to it.
Dan, what's your approach on the multi-currency world? Do you, when someone comes to you and says, this is the currency we want to measure this campaign on, are you open to working with various currencies, or are you really trying to stick to one?
No, we do today. We support both Nielsen and ComScore, and then certainly lean very heavily on our own first-party data. So our addressable business has been taking off year over year. If I had my preference, right, I would suggest that everybody help move to our addressable first-party data set. But happy to support ComScore, happy to support Nielsen, and understanding Dave's points. And like you said, the buyers get to make the decision. We've got to be able to be nimble, somewhat interoperable in a multi-currency world.
And is this the same way on measurement? David, you were talking about, I think, really more of an outcome. Some clients are more of an outcome-based buying state of mind. Is that something that your footprint can lean into, is outcomes-based measurement with that level of data that you have? 1,000%,
right? I mean, I think if you look at Spectrum, and a lot of conversations along the Croisette here this week are about full funnel, right? And what TV's role is in...
another phrase that becomes meaningless unless you put real definition around it.
Yes, right. So TV's always been this branding mechanism, right? Reach, awareness. Then you've got mid-funnel, you've got low-funnel. What I love about what Spectrum is able to do, right, is we've got massive reach from a linear television standpoint. We can dive into geographical targeting, right, where we have very large markets, people in those markets going directly to auto dealerships, QSRs, restaurants, driving, again, action and outcome. Are people taking those actions? Are they going to those medium to small businesses? And then addressable, right? So that's sort of the cherry on top, right? Where you're able to track exposure, tie it back, website visits, attribution, really that digital, deterministic data set that ties it all together.
Which
So
is a real differentiator
Yeah.
out there in the marketplace. You, Michael Guth, your CMO, and I were talking before the recording here in the Spectrum Reach apartment. Thank you very much, Spectrum Reach. Got to plug it.
How many
Gotta
times? How many
amortize-
times do you-
Well, I know. Your
Michael
CEO
drives a hard
pays
bargain,
attention.
yeah.
Right, exactly. But that you're able now to represent Amazon inventory in the markets across your footprint, and then commingle the data to get an even deeper deterministic level of data for each campaign as well. Is that true?
Yes, the Amazon partnership has been tremendous. When we were looking at the different options, if you will, of streamers who had a massive ad-supported viewership, Amazon was so complementary to us from a reach standpoint. It was truly additive to what we sell. We've got a great size of inventory ourselves. We've got other affiliates and partners that we work with. Amazon was kind of that missing piece now, where it's, I would say, holistically maybe added 35% on average across the market. So it really has been well received, not only by our sellers and our teams, but also by the local brands that have been buying local TV from us. This is a pure add-on and is an additional impression in their market.
I mean, I know we're not breaking news with that announcement, but
No,
I mean, it's
we've
something
gotta-
I think
we've
I
gotta
don't know
promote it.
a lot of
Yeah.
people understood that you're combining those. Does that make a difference when you're making those decisions? Does that make a difference, something like that?
Yeah, it does. That and also the Amazon Roku announcement that I referenced earlier it is a really good signal of some big players in the marketplace with Spectrum and Roku and Amazon working together and not being walled gardens, not being our solutions the only solution you can. If you want to use our data, you got to buy from us. I'm going to keep it in this little contained area. It's about sharing data. It's about allowing us access to these larger data sets, which is a really good sign, I think, moving forward, and kind of gets to what we were talking about earlier. It's a nice step towards how do you solve for some of this stuff across the walled gardens, and it really is those walled gardens pulling down the walls and making that data available to buyers.
I mean, you talk about the walled gardens, the data there, and I asked you about this during our prep, they're grading their own homework. And yet, 60% of all ad buys, or some large number percentage, depending on who you ask, are going to the big walled gardens. Amazon, who we just talked about sharing data and really opening that up a little bit, but Google and Meta in particular. Feelings on that? I mean, as a buyer, it's easy. I shared a slide during a speech the other day that showed in 1975, the top 10 shows on broadcast got 500 million viewers, which is how Don Draper could drink at work. He bought 10 shows, right? Now it's like, well, we can just buy these 3 walled gardens and drink at work again. Is it not that easy, or do you not, as a buyer, do you not see it as simple, or do you see it as bad for the industry, perhaps?
It is more simple in some ways and much more difficult and complicated in other ways. So a couple things. One, they do grade their own homework. We grade their own homework.
On performance? Or?
Yeah, we have our own tools that measure our campaign's performance within their ecosystems, but not outside of it. And we're building tools to try and equalize that across walled gardens to try and get to a more universal measurement. And that's really the agency and analytics challenge. So it is problematic because what you're optimizing against is how well your Google campaign is performing against previous Google campaigns, not against everything else, because there's no real metric to do that. So it is easier. It is easier to say, hey, we can spend a ton of money with Meta, and it's one buyer, one interface, and they can run the campaign. But measuring that effectiveness against, again, upper funnel metrics like television is a much different animal. And that's, again, part of the puzzle that we're trying to solve for. And there is an effectiveness to being in user-generated content or short-form content, but we know there's an effectiveness to premium, long-form television and running 30-second premium ads that get awards at Cannes Lion in that content. And we know that has a positive impact. We're not able to tie it down to the exact click-through the way that a Meta is, but it's getting all of that work together. So it would be very easy just to say, yeah, we'll just run this, and look, our Meta campaign performed a little bit better than it did last year, but that would be ignoring everything else that we need to do.
And so what makes because we're at the Cannes Festival, what does make ads better? Is the creatives, do they still matter? Because we hear a lot about data, metric, etc. What's that little, emotion? Does that still have an impact?
Yeah, look, I think creative is still extremely important. We're in the business for a lot of our advertisers, 23,000 local advertisers. We've made and shot over 15,000 creative, right? So understanding, again, what's in the message, what's the call to action. We work with Waymark, which is an AI generative company that makes these creatives in minutes, really, really impressive technology. So creative matters. What's in this?
Click on that for a second?
Yeah, would love to.
You just said you made 15,000 ads or some crazy made up number like that.
Not me personally.
Yeah. But explain that. I mean, because I think we toss, those of us, I try to explain what Cannes Lion is to people who are not in the ad industry, even people who are in the media industry. Marion had never been to Cannes Lion before because she's predominantly been on tech side or the content side. Yeah. And MIPCOM, which is here, is nothing like this. So I try to explain things like generative AI and its advances in advertising. And I think we move so fast by it. It's become so normal for us. Right. But explain what that means.
So for Waymark and the AI creation of ads, we did something really cool 2 weeks ago at the ANA conference in Naples, right, where we sat down with Ernst & Young and Plant Moran. We ingested their brand brief simultaneously to our architect audience platform, sort of planning the media across linear and streaming. Waymark was doing the same thing with those brand briefs. Plant Moran was looking to reach a tax audit professional, and EY was looking to reach CTOs and technology professionals. What was really cool is we both, went to our computers, did our work over the course of 2 or 3 hours, and we were from sort of planning concept to live on the air within 72 hours.
Wow.
So when you think about just the time, right, and hearing those CMOs say, wow, this used to take 4 months, right? Like from ideation to creation, the fact of, the people still are the inputs, right? You still have thoughtful creative. You still need to be human generated, but the AI, just the efficiencies, and you could throw it out, you can scrap it, you can say, shoot it again, do it differently. So the ability to just produce more in an efficient manner, hopefully makes us all better and stronger at our jobs.
Do you see that infiltrating your workflow as much? I mean, that's a creative exploitation of it, but how are you seeing AI creep into your world?
Yeah, so on the buying side, we're a buying agency. We have a creative division, but it's relatively small relative to the size of our buying operation. What we're really leaning into related to that is creative scoring, assembly and scoring. So we're not going to build the creative assets, but using AI tools to assemble those assets in a variety of ways to reach different audiences or to appeal to different audiences, and then scoring how effective those ads are. That's what we're really pushing forward so we can do those when there are 15,000 different versions of it to
mini
iterate.
A/B testing within the spot itself. Is that
on the
different
fly.
Segments of the ad based on how it performs?
Correct. Yeah, different elements of the ad assembled a different way, or if you have 100 different pieces, assets to combine these 7, create this ad and put it out. And that's more display,
and that's on digital video and digital television.
Primary display right now,
Got it.
but will be video as well. And so we're pushing forward in that way. And then I guess the start of the question was, does creative matter? I mean, I think it matters more than ever. And blending or matching the creative and the tone and feel of the creative with the content you're in is more important than ever, and more and more easily to be enabled than ever. Right? Go back years, there was ways to digitally insert a carton of orange juice in the middle of a Will and Grace syndicated episode. It's essentially the same thing or a similar thing, but obviously with AI now it's just seamless, and you can match that in a way that obviously we never could in the past. So that's just more and more important.
Fascinating.
But I will challenge that though. I mean, that's contextual. And how important is contextual? Do you sell contextual to the content you're in? I know that you do, but like, how do you, when you look at your entire footprint and someone says to you, "I want a sports buy," how do you put that into play across your entire footprint? Or I want a contextual against, let's say not news, but daytime talk. How do you put that into play across your entire footprint when you have, how many homes do you cross right now?
We cross 30 million homes. And yes, contextual is a big part of it, right? Sports, like Dave mentioned, is in high demand. College football for us, Monday Night Football, even NHL playoffs. So we sell sports either by market or full footprint. So again, we can carve that, target it. I think contextual is great. Certainly when you're looking to maybe do some broad inclusions, exclusions. What I love about what we're able to deliver is we can go deeper, right? So we can actually go down to selling title. We can go down to network. I think we provide a greater level of transparency than maybe the marketplace has been willing to adopt at the moment, right? Contextual seems sort of normal. Everybody's comfortable with it to some degree. We speak the same language in what those definitions mean. So it's helpful. We do a lot of it, but I would love to see us continue to push and the buyers continue to push to go deeper.
Yeah, it's a step further than contextual now. It's mood, and it is you're coming out of a scene of a show that has a particular mood, and your spot is going to match that mood. And we've all watched some dramatic scene, and you're crying, and then some ad starts blaring in. And, so to avoid that and prevent that, and really match the mood. Maybe you don't want a depressing scene, but you know what I mean. Match the mood is kind of the evolution of that of contextual.
And that's how you take media itself as a science to that next level.
Correct. Yes.
And that's how you're selling more often than not.
We're not down to sort of
level
mood yet, right? I love it. I think we need to get there. I do completely agree as a consumer, right? You want to sort of see maybe more ads in tone with how you're feeling or what you're viewing. I think that would probably provide better ROAS, but
and that's really where creative does come into play. Is you want you look at some of the ads that you see in some of the sports programs, and they don't feel like they fit there, and then the others, you get one of the Kelsey brothers or somebody else coming out. Saquon Barkley coming out into the ads from the game itself, not really, but it just works better. If you could boil down your takeaway from Cannes Lion this week so far, and I know it's still early on, into one word, what would it be?
Into one word. I wasn't expecting one word. I was going to go.
Oh, you can go.
Long
You can go one sentence.
Yeah. Although one word would be cooler.
I would say so far for me, and day and a half in, I would say collaboration.
That's one word.
That's one word.
Good.
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations that I think buy side and sell side collaboration on how to move things forward.
I think that's one of the things we've been snagged on for a couple of years, especially as the move to connected television has been that collaboration.
How about you, Dan?
Early, can I do two words? I mean, It would be ROAS and attention. I think there's been more conversations around attention. You talked a lot about the other formats, social, right? Some of the studies that say, 1 30-second commercial in television, sight, sound, and motion equates to 1.5 YouTube ads, maybe 4.5 Facebook feed ads, and maybe 40 digital ads, right? So understanding, again, what are you buying? How much does it cost? And then what's the return on the ad spend? I think that's certainly an acronym that was used a lot early in my career, but I've heard it more in the last 24 hours than I had over the last 3 years.
Fascinating.
So my question for you guys is what's coming next? Because this is all fine and dandy. We're going to have lots of fun in the next few days, but what's going to keep you busy in the next few months? What's the main thing you're going to be focused on?
I don't know if it's the main thing, but I something that has come up a lot lately, and maybe top of mind because it's conversations I've had here as well. But I really think there's an overhaul happening in the programmatic space. I think CTV has changed how programmatic works, and the ad server to SSP to DSP to buyer, and all those hops and everyone taking a piece along the way.
Yeah. A lot of fun.
Famous ad tech tax.
Correct. And in the display world, when there's a million, literally infinite number of inventory sources versus CTV, where there's 50, 30, 60 publishers that you care about.
In the US,
it's a different game. And do we need all of the help to get to the publishers, or not? I can just call Dan and we can do a deal. I don't need to go through all these hops. So
do you think that's going to change?
I think it is changing. The players within the space are the
There is a
DSPs,
fatigue
the
with
DSPs
it.
and
Yeah,
SSPs and ad servers who have all kind of played nicely are starting to tread on each other's territory, and it's
Yeah, I don't
getting
usually ask
interesting.
that question of buyers in these types of public forums because they don't necessarily want to talk about it. But yeah, it does feel like this has got to come to a close because everyone's tired of it.
I come from the TV side from years ago and relatively new to the programmatic side. So maybe I don't know what I shouldn't say, but I'm going to say
That
it because
makes
it's
for a perfect
something that's
podcast.
happening.
Yeah, it does.
Keep
Right,
at
yeah.
it. Keep at it.
Get myself in trouble.
Well, we're happy to get you in trouble.
How about you, Dan?
Yeah, no, look, we traditionally start our upfront negotiations later after a lot of the big networks do theirs. So we've got a few months worth of work ahead of us, continuing to promote our addressable capabilities and our full footprint opportunities. So we'll be selling like crazy, hopefully through the next couple months.
So as we were talking with you guys here in Candid Alliance, we just heard some news from Spectrum Reach. Dan, do you want to share with us what happened?
Yeah, I found out here in Cannes that I was promoted to Chief Revenue Officer. So pretty excited
Congratulations.
to
Congratulations.
come here to Cannes and
Our
get to
silent
celebrate.
audience can clap.
Congratulations.
I think it's our cue to wrap up this episode and open champagne, right?
I think
that's
so.
it.
Rosé champagne. Thank you both for coming. Dan Callahan, Spectrum Reach, Dave Campanelli from Horizon. This has been great. Thank you, Spectrum Reach, for hosting us at your apartment in Cannes on the Croisette. This is Marion Ranchet, and your newsletter is called...
Streaming Made Easy on Substack.
And
Yours. You're Evan Shapiro.
I am
Everyone
Evan
knows
Shapiro,
that.
yeah.
I should stop presenting this guy. And your newsletter is?
Media War and Peace, also on Substack. Thank you so much. It's been great coming to you from the Croisette. We've got one more to record. We'll see you soon.